Today's movie, The Professor, opens with a powerful and emotional story. Meet Richard, a literature professor who is about to face a life-changing revelation. Richard learns he has lung cancer, and his doctor delivers a grim prognosis. He might only have 6 months to live without treatment. Devastated by this news, Richard tries to come to terms with his fate. He heads to work, attempting to carry on with his daily routine, but the weight of his diagnosis is unbearable. The story takes a poignant turn during dinner, where Richard sits with his daughter Olivia and his wife Veronica. As he prepares to share his heartbreaking news, Olivia suddenly makes an unexpected confession. She reveals that she is attracted to girls. Veronica's reaction to Olivia's revelation is unexpected. She laughs dismissively and brushes it off as just a phase. Richard, trying to support his daughter, finds himself caught in the middle of a heated argument between Veronica and Olivia. Olivia, feeling hurt and unsupported, storms out. Left alone with Richard, Veronica makes a shocking confession. She admits to having an affair with Henry, Richard's boss. Richard is bewildered, questioning why she would choose Henry, whom he regards as ineffectual. Veronica explains that Henry has a form of courage that she finds compelling, something she feels is missing in their relationship. As Veronica prepares to leave, she asks Richard about what he intended to say at dinner. With a hint of dark humor, Richard jokes that he was planning to apologize for only having 2 eggs. The following day, Richard addresses his students with a bold and unconventional talk. Standing before his class, Richard sets the tone with a clear message. He outlines the type of students he values, stating that those who don't meet these standards are welcome to leave and will receive a C grade. For those who choose to stay, the expectation is straightforward. Read 1 book and write a reflection for their peers. As Richard finishes his speech, nearly all the students decide to leave, leaving only a few behind. Among those who remain, Richard notices a feminist student. He bluntly expresses that he isn't concerned with feminist issues at the moment and dismisses any discussions on gender inequality. Richard abruptly ends his class, needing a break to manage his emotions. With a touch of humor, he casually jokes that any student who knows where to get weed can find him in his office. He then leaves, surprising the remaining students by shutting the door behind him. Later, Richard heads to a bar where he meets his best friend Peter. Over drinks, Richard confides in Peter about his struggle with his illness and his desire to take some time off work. Peter, deeply sympathetic, tries to offer comfort, but Richard is frustrated by the pity and asks Peter to stop. The next day, Richard and Veronica have a candid conversation about their family issues. Richard suggests that Veronica should not share their marital problems with their daughter, Olivia. Instead, he gives Veronica the freedom to continue her relationship with her lover. At the same time, Richard reveals that he no longer feels the need to remain faithful to her. Their conversation takes a turn as they spend time together, getting drunk and reconnecting in an unexpected way. Later that night, Olivia arrives home with a friend and is shocked to find her parents in a state of intoxicated revelry. Seeing the chaos, Olivia decides to take her friend and leave, leaving her parents to continue their evening in disarray. That night, Veronica reflects on her reaction to Olivia's confession and feels regretful. The following day, during a lecture, Richard meets with the few students who chose to stay in his class. He asks a student named Clara to introduce herself, only to discover that she is Henry's niece, Henry being the man Richard's wife is involved with. Clara reveals that she also has a strained relationship with her uncle. In a moment of camaraderie, Richard suggests they all head to a pub. At the pub, Richard engages in a heartfelt conversation, sharing his life experiences and advice with the young students. A waitress approaches the table. Richard engages in playful flirtation with her, and she responds in kind. Veronica is seen enjoying her time with Henry. When Richard returns to the table, he requests that his students leave a generous tip for the waitress, adding a final touch to their lively evening. Richard's recent actions have left his students somewhat stunned. Later, during a family dinner, Richard attempts to mend his relationship with Veronica by offering a heartfelt apology. Olivia, their daughter, accepts the apology, marking a moment of reconciliation. As the new school day begins, a feminist student addresses Richard and the remaining students. She shares her thoughts on the assigned readings, and Richard notices a positive change in her perspective. In a lighter moment, a student visits Richard's office and presents him with a free brownie infused with weed. Richard expresses his gratitude and decides to sample the treat, adding a touch of levity to his day. The student who brought the brownie is making a bold move. He continues to flirt with Richard, suggesting they have some fun together. Intrigued and in a playful mood, Richard asks the student to pour him a whiskey and accepts the unconventional offer. At home, Richard has a heartfelt conversation with Olivia. He inquires if she is happy with her girlfriend. Olivia responds with joy, affirming her happiness. Richard, moved and proud, expresses his delight in his daughter's contentment. Back at the college, Richard takes his remaining students outside to the lawn. There, they indulge in illegal substances and alcohol, pushing the boundaries of conventional classroom activities. Unable to watch Richard self-destruct any longer, Peter decides to intervene. He takes Richard to a cancer support group, hoping it will provide some solace. However, after hearing the stories of other patients, Richard dismisses their experiences, declaring that their time is too precious to waste. Richard proposes a different approach. He suggests they all go out and enjoy themselves. His offer is met with reluctance, as no one is willing to join him. Undeterred, Richard bids farewell to the group and heads to a pub with Peter. As they get drunk, Richard shares a radical idea with Peter, revealing his latest thoughts and plans. Feeling impatient with waiting for the inevitable, Richard decides he wants to embark on a journey. As he ponders his next move, Clara walks into the pub. Richard, in a moment of spontaneity, sends Peter home in a taxi, choosing to stay behind with Clara. Clara offers Richard another drink, and the evening takes a lively turn as she orders a song for them. Amidst the music, Richard opens up to Clara about his terminal diagnosis. Clara, clearly moved by Richard's story, expresses her admiration for him and asks him to dance. During their dance, Clara leans in for a kiss, but before she can, Richard suddenly faints and collapses. Paramedics rush Richard to the hospital, leaving Clara and the pub patrons in shock. Upon returning home from the hospital, Richard is greeted by Veronica's concerned inquiry about his whereabouts. He offers a vague apology but chooses not to reveal the details of his recent ordeal to his wife. The next day at work, Henry summons Richard to his office. In a tense confrontation, Henry threatens to fire Richard due to his recent disruptive behavior. Richard, undeterred, counters with his own threat. He reveals that he knows about Henry's affair with Veronica and uses this knowledge as leverage. Richard warns Henry that he will expose the affair to Henry's wife unless he is left alone. Richard demands a sabbatical, leaving Henry with no option but to agree. In the classroom, Clara speaks to her classmates about the necessity and importance of love in the world, casting a sorrowful glance at Richard. Richard, moved by Clara's words, concludes the lesson with an impassioned speech about the importance of living life authentically. He emphasizes that living otherwise renders everything futile. Later in his office, Richard suddenly feels unwell. Overcome by his illness, he collapses onto the floor, a stark reminder of his fragile condition. Peter discovers Richard in a weakened state. Seeing Richard's condition, Peter is deeply concerned. Richard asks his friend to accompany him to a church where he opens up about his feelings and reflections on life. In an emotional moment, Richard seems to be bidding farewell to Peter. Overwhelmed, Peter starts to cry, and they share a heartfelt embrace, each trying to offer comfort and solace. Later that evening, Henry hosts a company dinner, which both Veronica and Richard attend. In a dramatic turn of events, Richard approaches Henry's wife and kisses her passionately in front of everyone. Despite the bold display, Henry remains outwardly composed, pretending as if nothing unusual has occurred. During the dinner, Richard stands up and addresses everyone. He openly reveals his illness, using the moment to subtly hint at Henry's affair with his wife. Richard expresses his gratitude to Peter for their enduring friendship and affirms his feelings for Veronica. He states that he still loves her and is grateful for their time together. As the evening comes to a close, Richard bids farewell to Veronica. He gently advises her to seek happiness and embraces her one last time. Veronica, overcome with emotion, cries as Richard gazes at her lovingly. They part ways with a poignant final look. Back home, Richard is preparing to leave, but Olivia arrives before he can finish packing. Olivia is visibly upset, having been hurt by a betrayal from a friend. Richard tries to comfort her, offering a drink in an attempt to soothe her distress. Noticing her father's somber demeanor, Olivia inquires about what's troubling him. Richard then reveals his illness to her, sharing the gravity of his situation. As their time together comes to an end, Richard imparts a heartfelt message to Olivia. He urges her to always stay true to herself and expresses how deeply he will miss her. Olivia watches from the porch as Richard sits in the car, preparing to drive away. Their final moments together are filled with unspoken emotions. Richard blows Olivia a final kiss, and she watches as he drives away. He pauses at an intersection, gazing into the distance as if contemplating his choices.